Should the Habs be talking trades, and is it time to send Jesperi Kotkaniemi to Laval? That and more in this week's Hockey Inside Out. This week's Hockey Inside Out is brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal on Drummond Street, right across the street from the Bell Centre. Your home away from home for Canadiens road games. Okay, on this week's show, we have Stu Cowan back with us from the Montreal Gazette. Went on a little foray out there in North America. CBC Daybreak's Jessica Rusnak, who's, you were on vacation?
I was in Jamaica.
Okay. I was in Columbus.
Almost the same.
And Bruin lover Joey Elias, the comedian, he's back with us.
I was at Starbucks.
There's no question that this version of the Montreal Canadiens has been a thrilling team to watch, but that doesn't always translate into success. Despite a few key veterans on the roster, the core is made up of kids who aren't old enough to drink yet in most US states, or shouldn't be drinking because they're too young. Wait until you're 25, kids. After a meltdown against the Rangers and a beatdown on Tuesday night against the Bruins, it's clear that this team is defensively irresponsible and too often takes full periods off. There's no doubt that the Canadiens' future is promising, but the future cannot come soon enough for some. Should General Manager Marc Bergevin make a trade in an effort to get the Canadiens into the playoffs, or keep the team as is and hope for the best?
When you talk about the future, there is a lot of kids on this team with a bright future. The two main guys are Carey Price and Shea Weber. Now, how much of a future is there with them? I think that's what Marc Bergevin has to start assessing, is whether this team is good enough to win now. They're not. And are you just going to keep hanging on to Carey Price or Shea Weber, or at some point, do you look to shop these guys and do a complete rebuild and go with the youth movement and try and move forward? Carey Price has been playing like Carey Price played before Michel Therrien got fired. And you wonder what that means moving forward. I think Marc Bergevin has to do something. That's back-to-back embarrassing losses at the Bell Center. I mean, were you one of the guys in a Bruin sweater sitting in the lower bowl the other night watching the end of that game? That seemed to be all there was. The Habs fans were all gone. I think there is, Montreal's known to panic early. I think there's reason right now for this team and the management to panic. There's empty seats. Tickets are available for all the games. It was announced to sell out against the Bruins. There was still a lot of empty seats. There's a lot of bad stuff going on right now with the Canadiens.
Well, I think they can't keep doing this patchwork. And if you think about it, Marc Bergevin said the only way to get number one center is by trading Carey Price. And he said that he would not trade Carey Price. And that was probably about 3-4 years ago. Well, maybe that's time to revisit that theory and think, you know what, maybe it is time to trade Carey Price and get someone who can score. Because right now, he's focusing this team on stopping the puck from getting into net rather than getting players who can shoot the puck and get it into the opposition's net. And I think he has to change his philosophy right now that the defense is not very good, your goaltender's not playing very well, and he's your highest paid player, that you have to do something. You have to get some players who are able to go out there and score goals when you need them.
I think no trade's going to be made because other than Price and Weber and maybe one or two people, what is the trade value that this team has right now? I mean, they've dug themselves a hole by proving to the league right now they can't play defense, they can't kill a penalty. So unless you're trading Price, who he's not the best goaltender in the world right now. Shea Weber against the Bruins last night, I would have benched the captain for the third period. And you talk about you want to teach the kids, if you have your leaders not coming out and playing hard, that's a bigger issue.
You talk about trading. There's two ways you trade, right? You trade because you want to win now. That means you're giving up prospects. That's other teams are going to want the Canadiens prospects for a trade to win now. A Taylor Hall, for example, out of New Jersey. Or you trade for the future, which is when Carey Price and Shea Weber and guys like that come into play. And I think it's still early. When we say it's early, but this has been an ugly 5-game slide. And if it continues much longer, if this goes another 3-4 games, I think then you got to try and figure out what you're going to do. And Michel, I think Claude Julien is walking on thin ice right now. But is Jeff Molson going to let his GM fire a second coach? Like, how many coaches can you blame before
it becomes
you got to look in the mirror?
Well, the GM obviously is in year 8 of a 5-year plan now, so
maybe he should fire himself.
Well, you got to wonder when ownership is going to say, look, we've given you a lot of rope. I mean, 3 years of rope, that's a lot, and it's obviously not bearing the fruit that they want. So something has to be done. I think it's time for the GM.
Well, I mean, if they don't make the playoffs this year, I think it's obvious that he's going to...
Well, if they don't make the playoffs, I mean,
Something
has to happen. I mean, Jeff Molson, they're still building condos and making money. They still have $8 million in cap space they haven't spent. Like, the Canadiens are the New York Yankees of hockey. Can you imagine the New York Yankees not spending every available dollar that they had on players? And this goes back to when Bergevin played hardball with Radulov and Markov. They both walked. They both told him to take a hike, and he was left with this money, and he had no plan B. And ever since then, he hasn't been able to spend that money. So you have a team in a salary cap world playing $8 million below the salary cap, and we're seeing what's happening.
Whenever Radulov is brought up, it always hurts me. Because I think about
well, they could have afforded him. I mean, they easily could have
afforded
afforded him under the salary cap. But when Bergevin said that final offer, take it or leave it, to both of them, first come, first served.
In Tuesday night's 8-1 drubbing against the Bruins, the Canadiens gave up 2 power play goals. They're now dead last in the NHL in the penalty kill. I think you even mentioned in the break that they're even behind Seattle.
They are, yes.
They're 32nd.
Yeah.
Do you think they could fix the penalty kill with the roster that they have, or do they need to get new players?
At this point, I think they need to get someone new. They need to get some fresh blood here because nothing has been working. They've spent so much time in practice working on this as well, so then when it comes time to games, nothing has improved there. That maybe if you get someone who hasn't been around this team from the start of the season, players who aren't getting frustrated with the penalty kill. I remember Brendan Gallagher at the golf tournament, the big question was about the power play, because last year the power play struggled, and Gallagher said that it starts to weigh on you and becomes a little bit more mental at certain times, and perhaps that's what's happening with the penalty kill. So if they could get someone who plays on the penalty kill regularly to come in, maybe that player could be the difference.
But penalty kill is just hard work, right? There's no real skill. I mean, it's a system, and guys that are willing to block shots, guys that are willing to work hard, and they're just brutal. And like, how you go from the worst power play or the second worst power play in the NHL one year to the power play being okay this year, and then your penalty kill, which was okay last year, is horrible. They can't. I mean, it's when a penalty is called, they might as well put the goal up on the scoreboard and save the misery of the following 2 minutes trying to kill it. And as I wrote my game day report after the game against the Bruins, I'm starting to wonder if the players have quit on the coach. There was no fight. I mean, one of the things this team has had the last 2 seasons is they never give up. They fight back. Against the Bruins, when it was 4-1, it was over. They just stopped. They just mailed it in. Same as the game before. When I asked Claude Julien after the game against the Rangers, did you think about calling a timeout earlier in the game? And he didn't like the question. And he said, well, I talked with my players during the second intermission, and I got my message across. Well, obviously he didn't, the way they came out for the third period. So that's why I'm wondering if Claude Julien is walking on thin ice right now with the way things have been going.
But you think so? Because it's only been a few games that they've really been sliding, and maybe they're just
But you can't, in today's NHL, you can't
season.
afford to go, you can't afford these slumps. Now it's 5 games. That matches their worst stretch last year, which was right at the same time of the year when Carey Price was horrible again. Carey Price has to be their best player. He hasn't been. So it's, you fall out of the playoff spots really quick in the NHL, and with the loser points, once you get 4, 6, 8 points out, it's hard to come back.
The only thing I'd say about I wouldn't change the personnel for the penalty kill. You don't want to blame the coach, but I believe it's Luke Richardson who runs it. Maybe give it to another assistant coach to try. Maybe a new system comes in. I don't know, but before you start making trades and making moves and firing, maybe it's time just to light a fire under these players by getting a new coach to help them out. Maybe they're not responding to the system that they have in. Maybe they got to change the system. I mean, the power play for the last 3 years didn't do well because nobody adjusted it. If you watched up until last year and 3 years prior, the power play was the exact same thing. So that's why maybe this year it's better because they finally learned to change. Maybe they can do the same thing with the penalty kill. Although they have to do something.
The most important player on your penalty kill is your goalie, and Carey Price hasn't been very good, so that's a big reason why they're not very good on the penalty kill also.
Last season, the Canadiens sent Victor Mete down to Laval to try and jumpstart his play. So far, after playing 17 games, Jesperi Kotkaniemi has only 3 points. You think it's about time that he goes to Laval?
Earlier in the season, I would have said no. Now I think yes. I think he's lost his confidence, personal confidence. I think Julien has lost confidence in him. Kotkaniemi last season was always a fun kid to be around. He was having a good time.
Mr. Smiley.
Mr. Smiley. He's not happy right now. I think they need to get his confidence back. I think they need to send him down to Laval, let Joel Bouchard work with him. Bouchard's good with young kids. Play the hell out of him. Play him 20 minutes a game. Play him penalty kill. Play him. And we saw what happened with Victor Mete last year. He was a better player when he came back. But I think right now it's Kotkaniemi doesn't look like he's having any fun. He looks like, I think the confidence is, he's lost his confidence. As I said, the coach has lost confidence in him, and I think that's something that they need to rebuild.
But that's the issue with the Montreal Canadiens. You have these players, they come in, they've got a great rookie year, and then their sophomore year, it's almost like, I don't know what happens with the coaching staff, that you coddle them or when they're the rookie, but then as soon as they're in their sophomore year, all of a sudden, it's really hard for them. And I think that's the issue with the Montreal Canadiens. That's part of developing. You don't just develop a player year one and then you kind of, give them a little bit of tough love. And sending him down to Laval to find his confidence, why did he lose his confidence? Why did the coach lose confidence in him? That is the greater issue there for me when it comes to Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Sophomore jinx, right? Everybody talks about it, but I think at this point you have to send him down. He's a young kid, and young kids will, go through these spells where they won't score, and they will score. They'll get hot, they'll get cold. But confidence in a young player is something that has to be built up. You can't, build it up, kick him down, build him up, kick him down. So if he does go to Laval and he does get the minutes, maybe puts a few in the net, gets his confidence back, comes back up, and he's also, to me, he seemed a step faster last year than this year.
He's heavier. I mean, he's adjusting to his body too. I think last year with Kotkaniemi there was an adrenaline rush too, right? He's drafted 3rd overall, which a lot of people didn't expect him to go that high. He comes to the rookie camp, he didn't do very well. Goes to training camp, does well, makes the team, stays with the team. Every day was like Christmas for this kid, right? Living his dream. And I think that adrenaline just kept him going. I mean, he crashed a little bit at the end when Julien made him a healthy scratch, but I think that adrenaline is like, now it's a job, right? Now he's here, and I think some of that adrenaline is gone, and I think that's part of what he's missing. And again, if there's one coach who can put adrenaline into kids, it's Joel Bouchard. I mean, he pushes guys hard, and I think that would be good for Kotkaniemi right now. Okay.
The first half of this week's show has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal. That's the one across the street from the Bell Center. Book your holiday parties and corporate events here now. Okay, after getting pulled on Tuesday night against the Bruins, Carey Price now ranks in the bottom 3rd in goals against as well as save percentage. Do you think his decline this season can be blamed on the defense, or is the onus on Price?
Listen, he went through the same thing last year where he had like a little bit of a dip. I believe he took
same time of the year.
A couple of weeks off. Yeah, he had a baby. But the one term that is going to become popular, I believe, much like analytics, is time management. And when he started playing back-to-back games earlier in the week, I understand you have to win, but Carey Price is not the thoroughbred that he was when he first came in. He's been injured. You got to make sure that those injuries don't come back, especially in a goalie. Those recurring injuries take longer and longer to heal, and if he is the core of your team, you got to protect him. So, I don't know. You got to rest him more. Maybe, physical and mental rest is something he needs. I don't blame that. Listen, the defense is dismal. I think it's a combination. I don't think he's the goalie he once was. I think he can still be that goalie, but you put that with a porous defense and a no penalty kill, those are the numbers you're going to get.
I mean, this is the Carey Price we've seen the last few seasons. He has these slumps he goes through, and this team can't afford for him to go through those slumps. The defense hasn't been helping him a lot, that's true, but I mean, he's a $10.5 million goalie. They're actually paying him $15 million this year. They're paying him that much to cover up for other guys' mistakes. Right? Sidney Crosby's the highest paid player on the Penguins because whoever you put on his line is going to play well. He makes guys around him better. So when you're paying your goalie $15 million, every once in a while he has to cover up for a mistake. I mean, the Canadiens have been making a lot of mistakes in front of him. Price hasn't been bailing them out. And the other thing you were talking about earlier with the Kincaid, the backup, I think Julien has already lost confidence in Kincaid. That's why Price played back-to-back. So now what do you do? And I think this is the Carey Price. I mean, he's shown that he can be the best goalie in the world for a stretch, which he was down, the stretch last year when he almost brought them into the playoffs. But every year now, there's this part he goes through where he's just not very good, and he's not very good right now. And the defense in front of him isn't good either, but he's not good. I mean, some of those goals against the Bruins, Carey Price stops those. So there's reason for concern there. And again, it's sort of, I wonder because Price played like this before Michel Therrien. got the axe. And I wonder if history is repeating itself here. And
you would say they're in a better position now because they have Dominic Ducharme, who could take over as head coach, and you also have Joel Bouchard. So if you're Claude Julien, you know that there's two capable people who are able to take over your job there. But yeah, for sure, with Carey Price, that he has to be better, but he doesn't have a lot of help with him because of the defense that they have in front of him. But at the same time, as you mentioned, if you're the highest paid player and you're the leader on this team, you have to find a way to play better.
And he's frustrated too. At the end of last season, he said, I asked him, I said, what would you say to free agents to try and get them to come here? He says, I want to win, and I want to win now. I've never wanted to win more. I think he's frustrated. He's looking at the team in front of him and saying, I can't win with these guys.
Yeah.
Well, he better be patient, because if he wants to win now maybe 7, 10 years.
Last Saturday night, the Canadiens blew a 4-0 lead against the Rangers, and they ended up losing the game 6-5. I think we've talked enough about the Bruins game that happened on Tuesday night.
So let's talk about the Rangers.
How much of the blame for these losses would you place on the coaching staff, if any?
It's, as I mentioned earlier, Julien didn't call a timeout against the Rangers when they were starting to fall. The wheels are coming off. He said he had his message in the second period. They didn't listen. They didn't come out. Coaching staff has to take some of the responsibility, especially with the penalty kill being as bad as it's been. And as I mentioned, Carey Price is part of the reason for that. But it's just, they spent, after the Rangers game, instead of having a bag skate and working them hard, Julien took to me, the more sensible approach and just worked on what they weren't doing wrong, worked on their defensive system. The whole practice was about back checking, about defensive zone system, and then they went out and looked even worse. So that's where you wonder, like with the coaching staff, are the players starting to tune them out?
Yeah, well, the message has to get across, and especially the game that they had to rebound from, that game against the New York Rangers, that Geoff Petrie, after the game, had no real answer, that he said, we should have come out here. We should have been able to want to, prove ourselves that the game against the Rangers wasn't who we were, and they came out flat there. So you have to think, is the message not getting through from the coaching staff to the players?
I always look at what they do after. And obviously the response to the Rangers game was a worse game. So I don't know what you can do. I mean, obviously everybody wants some sort of change. I think it's easier in this day and age to get rid of a coach. We've seen this week, it doesn't matter how much money or how much you have left on your contract. If the players don't like you and they're not playing for you, you're going to go sit with Mike Babcock now.
Well, Claude Julien in his post-game news conference after the Bruins game, he looked rattled. Like he looked when he came up on the podium. Usually Claude's pretty calm, but he looked like a guy who was wondering, oh man, what am I going to do now? He was one of the French guys asked him a question, and he gave a really long answer. Like he stopped halfway through, and it was almost like, the longer I keep talking, the less questions you guys can ask me type of deal. And he looks like I'm sure he didn't sleep the night after the Bruins game. I mean, and plus it's a team that fired him and then went on and has been very successful since they got rid of him. So, I mean, Claude Julien, he's got to be tossing and turning in bed right now, wondering what he can do to get these guys back on track. I mean, I've mentioned it's early. It is early. I mean, the Canadiens can turn off. They win, 4 games in a row. We'll be back here next week talking about how they're back on track. But right now, it looks like it's going to be real difficult to get this team back on.
But they're about to go on that dreaded
Western
West
Canada
Coast
road
trip.
Western Canada trip.
And, this is the bank right now. You look at the schedule with Jersey and Philly and all these kind of...
This is where they were supposed to put all these points in the bank.
Right, and then they're not, and then you're going to go out west. Now, granted, some of the Canadian teams not, like Calgary, they got their own issues right now, so you hope that they can get out there. But if they don't even make it to the West Coast trip by playing above 500, we may be talking about a whole new slew of players and management
looking towards
in the
next.
new years.
They've got 2 out of a possible 10 points, and what should have been, they should have had 8 out of 10 on this stretch.
Easy.
This was a stretch, when they look at the schedule comes out, I'm sure they looked at it and said, okay, this is a key stretch. We're playing teams that aren't that good. We need to put points in the bank. And they haven't done it. I mean, they've looked really bad.
The future is looking grim, but I hope I'm wrong. Okay, that's all for this week's show, which has been brought to you by Madison's New York Grill and Bar in downtown Montreal, on Drummond Street across from the Bell Center, where you can wait out the traffic and enjoy their $10 specials after every Canadiens game. All right. Would you like to see the Canadiens make a trade, or do you believe that the roster that they have can get them through to the playoffs? Let us know in the comments section below. I'm Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.